In the quiet village of St. Mary Mead, a chipped teacup holds the key to a mystery. When valuable trinkets vanish at little paddocks, sisters Lavinia and Emily point fingers at their perfect maid. Mary, but Miss Jane Marple with her sharp eyes. And trusty Teacup sees more than tea leaves, she sees secrets. As whispers of theft spread, a spilled cup and a hidden locket reveal a scheme driven by fear and greed. Can Miss Marple unravel the truth before the village turns on an innocent girl? Dive into a cozy mystery where every sip tells a story. Chapter 1. The Teacup's first sip. Miss Jane Marple sat in the cozy parlour of Little Paddocks, her old friend's cottage in St. Mary Mead. The room smelled of fresh roses and warm scones. Sunlight slipped through lace curtains, painting soft patterns on the wooden floor. Miss Marple's small, delicate hands held a teacup, its porcelain cool against her fingers. She sipped the tea Earl Grey, just returned, smiled at the two sisters across from her. Miss Lavinia Skinner, plump and rosy-cheeked, poured more tea from a silver pot. Her eyes twinkled as she talked. "Jane, dear, you must meet our new maid, Mary. She's a treasure. Never seen such a perfect worker." Her voice was warm, like she was bragging about a favorite pet. Miss Emily Skinner, thin and sharp-eyed, nodded but didn't smile. "She's good, I'll give her that. Too good, maybe." Her words hung in the air, sharp like a pin. She adjusted her glasses and glanced at the teacup in front of her. Untouched, Miss Marple tilted her head, her white hair neat under a laced cap. "A perfect maid, you say? That's rare." Her voice was soft, but her blue eyes sparkled with curiosity. She set her teacup down, noticing how perfectly it sat on its saucer. Too perfect, perhaps. The Skinner sisters had lived in Little Paddocks for years. Lavinia, the older one, loved to chat and laugh. Emily, younger but sterner, kept the house's books and watched every penny. They'd always had maids, but none lasted long. Lavinia was too kind, Emily too picky. Yet here was Mary, their new maid, who seemed to please them both. Or did she? "Tell me about Mary," Miss Marple said, picking up her teacup again. The handle felt smooth, familiar. She liked teacups. They told stories if you watched closely how someone held them, where they placed them, what they hid behind a sip. Lavinia leaned forward, her chair creaking. "Oh, she's a wonder. Came to us 2 months ago, answered our ad in the paper. Cleans like a dream, cooks better than our old Clara, and never a complaint. She's quiet, polite, always on time. Why, she even polishes the silver without being asked." Emily snorted, her thin lips tight. "Too quiet, if you ask me. And that silver, have you checked it lately, Lavinia? I swear my brooch isn't where I left it." She crossed her arms, her eyes darting to the parlour door. Miss Marple sipped her tea, watching Emily over the rim. The teacup was old, with tiny roses painted on it. It matched the set on the table, but Mary had placed Miss Marple's cup just a bit apart, like it was special. Odd, she thought. Maids didn't usually fuss over one guest's cup. "Missing a brooch?" Miss Marple asked, her voice gentle. "That's troubling. Have you asked Mary about it?" Emily's face reddened. "Not yet. Don't want to scare her off, but I'm watching her. She's too perfect. Nobody's that good without a reason." Lavinia waved a hand, her bracelets jingling. "Oh, Emily, don't be silly. Mary's a blessing. You're always looking for trouble. Remember the last maid? You thought she stole your scarf, and it was just under your chair." Emily's eyes narrowed. "This is different. I know where I put my things. That brooch was on my dresser last week. Now it's gone." Miss Marple set her teacup down. The soft clink loud in the quiet room. She smoothed her skirt and smiled. "Things do go missing in busy houses. I'm sure it'll turn up. Tell me more about Mary. Where's she from?" Lavinia shrugged. "She said London, but she doesn't talk much about herself. Just showed up with a letter from a lady she worked for, Mrs. Devereux, I think. Said Mary was the best maid she ever had." Mrs. Devereux, Miss Marple's eyebrows lifted. She knew no such name in St. Mary Mead, but London was big. Still, something about Mary's story felt like a loose thread in a sweater. Pull it, and the whole thing might unravel. The parlor door opened, and Mary herself stepped in. She was young, maybe 25, with neat brown hair pinned under a white cap. Her apron was spotless, her face plain but pleasant. She carried a tray with fresh scones and a small pot of jam. "More tea, ma'am?" she asked Miss Marple, her voice soft, but clear. "Thank you, Mary," Miss Marple said, watching the girl's hands. They were steady, but her knuckles were white, like she was gripping the tray too hard. "This is lovely tea. You've a knack for it." Mary blushed, her eyes dropping to the teacup. "Thank you, ma'am. I try my best." She set the tray down and moved to clear a plate, her steps silent on the rug. Miss Marple noticed how Mary glanced at Emily, quick and nervous, before turning away. Emily's eyes followed her, sharp as a hawk's. Lavinia, meanwhile, beamed like a proud mother. The teacup sat between them all, quiet but heavy with meaning. "Mary, dear," Lavinia said, "tell Miss Marple about that apple pie you made yesterday. Best I've ever tasted." Mary smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just a simple recipe, ma'am. My mother taught me." She bobbed a curtsy and left the room, the door closing softly behind her. Miss Marple sipped her tea. Again, it was cooling now, but she didn't mind. She thought of her village, St. Mary Mead, where everyone knew everyone's business. A new maid like Mary would stir talk, especially one so perfect. Perfection was a mask, and Miss Marple knew masks, hid secrets. "Does Mary live here?" she asked, setting her teacup down. The saucer had a tiny chip, barely noticeable. Strange for a maid so careful. "Oh yes," Lavinia said. "She has a room upstairs. Keeps it tidy as a pin. You should see it, Jane." Emily muttered, "To tidy. Makes me wonder what she's hiding." Miss Marple smiled, her mind racing. She remembered a girl in St. Mary Mead, years ago, who'd been too perfect too. Turned out she was hiding a stolen ring in her mattress. People didn't change, not really, they just found new ways to hide. The afternoon passed with more tea and talk. Lavinia shared village gossip, Mrs. Price's new hat, Mr. Brown's sick cow. Emily stayed quiet, her eyes on the teacup like it might confess something. Miss Marple listened, her fingers tracing the roses on her cup. She noticed Mary come and go, always quick, always perfect. Too perfect. As the sun dipped low, Miss Marple stood to leave. "Thank you for a lovely visit," she said, pulling on her gloves. "I'll come again soon, and don't worry about that brooch, Emily. Things have a way of turning up." Emily frowned but nodded. Lavinia hugged her, smelling of lavender. "Do come back, Jane. Mary will make you that pie." Outside, the air was cool, the village quiet. Miss Marple walked slowly, her stick tapping the path. She thought of Mary, the teacup, the missing brooch. Something wasn't right. A perfect made in a house of secrets, was like a perfect stitch in a torn quilt. It stood out. Back at her own cottage, Miss Marple lit a lamp and sat by the fire. She pictured the parlour, the sisters, the teacup. Why had Mary placed it so carefully? Why had Emily stared at it so hard? And that chip on the saucer sloppy for a maid like Mary, or was it? Miss Marple poured herself a cup of tea from her own pot. She held the cup, warm and simple, and smiled. Teacups were like people. They looked fragile, but they held more than you thought. Secrets, lies, truths all brewing under the surface. She sipped and thought of St. Mary Mead. The village was small, but it taught her everything. People were never what they seemed. A maid could be a thief, a sister could be a schemer, and a teacup could be a clue. Tomorrow she'd walk to the village shop, listen to the gossip. Someone would know about Mary. Someone always did. For now, she finished her tea and set the cup down. It sat perfectly on its saucer, no chip, no secrets. But at Little Paddock's, another teacup held more than tea. Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. She'd find out what. Chapter 2. Whispers in the village. Miss Jane Marple stepped out of her cottage into the crisp morning air of St. Mary Mead. The village sparkled under a pale sun, with dew clinging to the grass like tiny jewels. Her black shoes clicked on the stone path as she walked, her stick tapping a steady rhythm. In her mind, she saw the teacup from Little Paddock's, perfectly placed, yet hiding something. She smiled. Today, she'd listen to the villagers' chatter. Gossip was like tea leaves in a cup. It showed patterns if you looked close. The village shop was her first stop. It was a small place, crammed with jars of sweets, stacks of newspapers, and a counter where Mrs. Price, the shopkeeper, held court. The bell jingled as Miss Marple pushed the door open. The air smelled of soap and fresh bread. Mrs. Price, round and chatty, looked up from dusting a shelf. "Why, Miss Marple? Early for you, isn't it?" Mrs. Price's eyes twinkled. She loved a good talk, and Miss Marple knew it. "Just a bit of shopping, dear," Miss Marple said, setting her basket on the counter. "And perhaps a chat. I visited the Skinner sisters yesterday. They've got a new Maid Mary, I believe." Mrs. Price's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, Mary, the perfect one, they say. Too perfect, if you ask me." She leaned closer, her voice, dropping. "Came out of nowhere, she did. 2 months ago, maybe. Answered the Skinner's ad, moved right into Little Paddock's. Nobody knows much about her." Miss Marple picked up a tin of biscuits, pretending to read the label. "Nobody. That's odd for St. Mary Mead. Someone always knows something." Mrs. Price nodded, her apron rustling. "Well, there's talk. Mrs. Weatherby, she lives by the church, says she saw Mary walking late at night, near the old mill. Funny time. For a maid to be out, don't you think?" "Very funny," Miss Marple said, her voice soft. She thought of the teacup again, how Mary's hands had gripped the tray too tight. Nervous hands, nervous walks. What else does the village say? Mrs. Price glanced at the door, then whispered, "Small things going missing. Not just at Little Paddock's. Mrs. Weatherby lost a silver spoon. Mr. Brown swears his pocket watch vanished from his shed. Nobody's pointing fingers yet, but, well, Mary's new, isn't she?" Miss Marple's blue eyes sparkled. "New doesn't mean guilty, but it's worth a thought." She paid for the biscuits and a bar of soap, tucking them into her basket. "Thank you, Mrs. Price. You've been most helpful." As she left the shop, the bell jingled again. The village was waking up. Children ran past, laughing, their shoes muddy from the fields. Miss Marple walked toward the church, her mind turning over Mrs. Price's words. A missing spoon, a watch, a brooch, small things, easy to slip into a pocket, easy to blame on a new maid. But was it too easy? At the church, she found Mrs. Weatherby, tending roses by the gate. The old woman's hands were gnarled, but her eyes were sharp. "Good morning, Miss Marple," she called, brushing dirt from her gloves. "Come to pray or to poke about?" Miss Marple chuckled. "A bit of both, perhaps. I hear you've had a loss of silver spoon." Mrs. Weatherby's face tightened. "Aye, my mother's spoon. Kept it on the mantel, polished every Sunday, gone. Last week I told the vicar, but he says I must have misplaced it." "Misplaced? I know my own house." "Of course you do," Miss Marple said, her voice soothing. "Mrs. Price mentioned seeing Mary, the Skinner's maid, near the mill at night. Have you noticed her about?" Mrs. Weatherby snorted. "I have. Last Tuesday, past 10, she was hurrying down Mill Lane. Looked like she didn't want to be seen. I don't trust her, Miss Marple. Too quiet, too neat, like she's hiding something." Miss Marple nodded, her fingers brushing the handle of her stick. "People do hide things, but not always what we think." She thanked Mrs. Weatherby and walked on, the village green stretching out before her. The mill was old, half forgotten, a place where secrets could hide. Why was Mary there, and why at night? Back at Little Paddock's, Miss Marple knocked on the door. Lavinia Skinner answered, her face bright. "Jane, twice in 2 days. Come in, have some tea." She led Miss Marple to the parlour, where the same teacup waited, roses painted on its side. Mary appeared, silent as a shadow, with a fresh pot of tea. "Thank you, Mary," Miss Marple said, watching the girl's face. Mary's eyes were down, her hands steady but pale. She poured the tea, her movements smooth, but the teacup clinked against the saucer, a tiny chip, barely visible. Miss Marple's heart quickened. That chip again. A perfect maid wouldn't miss it. Emily Skinner sat in her usual chair, her knitting, needles clicking like a clock. "Back so soon, Jane. Got a taste for our tea, have you?" Her voice was sharp, her eyes on Mary. "I do enjoy your hospitality," Miss Marple said, sipping her tea. It was strong, just how she liked it. "The village is buzzing today. Talk of missing things, spoons, watches, and your brooch, Emily. Any sign of it?" Emily's needles stopped. Not a trace. "I checked my dresser again this morning. It's gone." She glared at Mary, who was clearing crumbs from the table. Lavinia frowned. "Emily, don't start. Mary's done nothing but work hard. You're too quick to blame." "I'm not blind," Emily snapped. "Things don't just vanish. And her, always creeping about, so quiet you don't hear her coming." Mary's face stayed blank, but her hands paused, just for a second. Miss Marple saw it. She set her teacup down, the chip catching the light. "Mary, dear," she said, "you must be busy here. Do you ever get out, see the village?" Mary hesitated, her apron smoothing under her fingers. "Sometimes, ma'am. I walk when my work's done. Clears my head." "Lovely," Miss Marple said. "Mill Lane's a nice spot, isn't it? Quiet, out of the way." Mary's eyes flicked up, wide for a moment, then down again. "Aye, yes ma'am, it's peaceful." She curtsied and left her steps quick. Emily's knitting needles clicked faster. Mill Lane, what's she doing there? Nothing but old stones and weeds. Lavinia sighed. "Oh, Emily, let the girl walk. You'd suspect her of stealing the moon if it went missing." Miss Marple smiled, but her mind was racing. Mary's reaction, that quick look it, was fear, or close to it. The teacup sat on the table, its chip like a tiny scar. Why hadn't Mary replaced it? A maid so perfect should notice, unless she wanted it noticed. The afternoon wore on. Lavinia chattered about her garden. Emily grumbled about the cost of coal. Miss Marple listened, her eyes wandering to the parlour's corners. A silver candlestick gleamed on the mantel, but one was missing. Another theft, or just moved. She made a note to ask later. As she left, the sun was low, painting the sky pink. Miss Marple walked home, her stick tapping slower now. The village had given her pieces of a puzzle. Mary's late-night walks, missing trinkets, a chipped teacup, but pieces didn't make a picture yet. She thought of St. Mary Mead, how it hid secrets in plain sight, like the time young Tom stole apples and blamed the vicar's dog. Everyone believed him until Miss Marple saw the juice on his shirt at her cottage. She lit the fire and poured tea from her own pot. Her teacup was plain, no chips, no secrets. She sipped and thought of Mary, a perfect maid, but perfection was a trick. People weren't perfect. They were messy, full of wants and fears. Mary was hiding something, but what? And why did Emily watch her so closely? Miss Marple set her teacup down, the saucer steady. Tomorrow she'd visit the mill, see what drew. Mary there, she'd talk to Clara, the Skinner's cook too. Servants saw things others missed, and that teacup its chip was a clue, small but sharp, like a crack in a perfect mask. The fire crackled, and Miss Marple smiled. The village was talking, and she was listening. Soon the teacup would tell its story. Chapter 3. The missing brooch. Miss Jane Marple sat in her cosy cottage. The morning light soft through her window. Her teacup, plain and warm, rested in her hands. She sipped slowly, thinking of little paddocks and the chipped teacup she'd seen. There, its tiny flaw nagged at her like a loose stitch in a scarf. Yesterday's village gossip Mary's, late-night walks, missing spoons, and watches swirled in her mind. Something was wrong at the Skinner sisters' house, and Miss Marple meant to find out what. She set her teacup down and pulled on her coat. The air outside was chilly, with clouds hiding the sun. Her stick tapped the path as she walked 2 little paddocks, her basket swinging. The village was quiet, but trouble was brewing. She could feel it, like tea steeping too long. At little paddocks. Lavinia Skinner opened the door, her face pale. "Jane, oh, I'm glad you're here. It's awful Emily's in a state." Her voice shook, her hands twisting her apron. Miss Marple stepped inside, the familiar smell of roses and polish greeting her. "What's happened, dear?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Lavinia led her to the parlour, where Emily sat in her stiff chair, her eyes red. The knitting needles lay still in her lap, a rare sight. "It's my brooch," Emily said, her voice tight. "My emerald brooch, the one Mother left me. It's gone. I looked this morning, really looked, and it's not there." Miss Marple settled into a chair, her eyes scanning the room. The teacup was there, same as before, with its tiny chip glinting in the light. Mary had set it out, perfect as always, but that chip told a different story. "When did you last see it, Emily?" Miss Marple asked, folding her hands. "Last week, on my dresser," Emily said. "I don't wear it often, it's too precious, but I check it every few days. It was there, I'm sure. Now it's gone, and I know who took it." Her eyes darted to the door, where Mary stood, silent, holding a tray of tea and scones. Lavinia gasped. "Emily, stop it. You can't accuse. Mary, without proof. She's been nothing but good to us." "Good," Emily snapped, her face sharp as a knife. "Too good. Nobody's that perfect. She's sneaking around, taking things. First my brooch. What's next?" Mary's face stayed blank, but her hands trembled as she poured tea. The teacup clinked against the saucer, louder than it should. Miss Marple watched, her blue eyes steady. Mary's calm was cracking, like the chip in that cup. "Mary, dear," Miss Marple said gently, "have you seen Miss Emily's brooch? Perhaps while cleaning?" Mary shook her head, her voice soft. "No, ma'am. I dust the dresser, but I never touch her things. I wouldn't." Her eyes flicked to Emily, then down to the teacup. She set the tray down and left, her steps quick but quiet. Lavinia wrung her hands. "Jane, tell her she's wrong. Mary's no thief. Emily's just upset. She find that brooch under a cushion or something." Emily's lips thinned. "I know my own things, Lavinia. It's not under a cushion. It's gone, and she was. In my room yesterday." Miss Marple sipped her tea, the warmth steadying her thoughts. The teacup's chip caught her eye again. Why hadn't Mary replaced it? A maid so careful should notice. Unless the chip was meant to be seen, a tiny signal of something deeper. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said. "Emily, tell me about the brooch. Was it locked away?" Emily shook her head. "No, on the dresser, in its box. I don't lock things, never needed to until now." Her voice was bitter, her fingers clutching her skirt. Miss Marple nodded, her mind turning. An unlocked brooch, easy to take. But Mary's trembling hands, her quick glance at the teacup, those weren't the signs of a bold thief. They were signs of fear. Someone afraid didn't steal for fun. They stole for a reason or didn't steal at all. "Lavinia," Miss Marple said, "you mentioned Mary's old employer, Mrs. Devereux. Have you heard from her since Mary came?" Lavinia blinked, surprised. "No, just the letter she sent with Mary. Said she was the best maid, reliable, honest." "Why? Just curious," Miss Marple said, smiling, but her mind was racing. A letter from a stranger, no address to check. Convenient, like that chipped teacup. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where letters could be forged, and maids could be more than they seemed. The parlour felt heavy, the air thick with distrust. Emily stared at the teacup, her eyes hard. Lavinia fussed with a cushion, her cheerful face strained. Miss Marple sipped again, watching them both. Sisters, so different, one warm, one cold. Yet they'd lived together for years, sharing this house, its secrets, its tea. "May I see your room, Emily?" Miss Marple asked. It might help to look where the brooch was. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but you won't find anything. She's too clever." She led the way upstairs, her steps heavy. Lavinia followed, muttering about fairness. Emily's room was neat, almost too neat. The dresser was polished, its surface bare except for a lace doily and a small mirror. No box, no brooch. Miss Marple's eyes swept the room bed, wardrobe, a single chair. Everything in place, like a stage set for a play. She knelt, her knees creaking, and peered under the dresser. Nothing but dust, not even a speck out of place. "Mary cleans well," Miss Marple said, standing. "Very thorough, too thorough," Emily muttered. "Covers her tracks." Lavinia sighed. "Jane, please. Tell her it's nonsense. Mary's not a thief." Miss Marple didn't answer. She walked to the window, looking out at the garden. The roses were fading, their petals curling. Like secrets, she thought beautiful until they fell apart. She turned back, her eyes catching the teacup downstairs in her mind. That chip, it wasn't an accident. It was a clue, small but sharp, like a crack in Mary's perfection. Back in the parlour, Mary brought fresh tea. Her face was pale, her hands steady now, but her eyes avoided Emily's. Miss Marple watched her pour, the teacup steady on its saucer. "Mary," she said, "you must be tired, working so hard. Do you ever visit the village? Meet people?" Mary's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Not much, ma'am. I keep to myself. Work keeps me busy." She curtsied and left, the door closing softly. Emily's knitting needles clicked again, fast and angry. See, hiding something. She never talks, never stays still long enough to ask. Lavinia shook her head. "You're impossible, Emily. Jane, what do you think?" Miss Marple set her teacup down, the chip winking at her. "I think," she said, "that things aren't always what they seem. A brooch is small, easy to lose, or easy to hide." She smiled, her voice gentle but firm. "I'll keep an eye out, Emily. Don't worry," as she left Little Paddocks. The sky was grey, a chill in the air. Miss Marple walked slowly, her stick tapping the path. The village was quiet, but whispers were growing merry, the perfect maid, and a string of missing things. The brooch was the loudest whisper yet. Emeralds didn't vanish without reason. At her cottage, Miss Marple lit the fire and poured tea. Her own teacup was simple, no chips, no secrets. She thought of Mary's trembling hands, Emily's sharp eyes, Lavinia's blind trust. The chipped teacup at Little Paddocks was a puzzle piece, but the picture was still blurry. Why was Mary afraid? Why was Emily so sure? And where was that brooch? She remembered a girl in St. Mary Mead, years ago, accused of stealing a ring. Everyone believed her guilty until Miss Marple noticed her shoes to clean for someone sneaking about. People hid things, but they always left traces. Mary's trace was that teacup, chipped and wrong in a house of perfection. Tomorrow she'd talk to Clara, the Skinner's cook. Servants saw things, heard things. Clara might know about Mary's walks, or Emily's brooch, or that mysterious Mrs. Devereux. Miss Marple sipped her tea, the fire crackling. The village was a teacup, holding more than it showed. She'd find the truth, one sip at a time. Chapter 4. A Pattern in the Porcelain Miss. Jane Marple sat by her cottage window, her teacup warm in her hands. The morning was grey, with a damp breeze rustling the roses outside. She sipped her tea, thinking of Little Paddocks and that chipped teacup on the Skinner sisters' table. Its tiny flaw was like a whisper, telling her something was wrong. Mary, the perfect maid, was hiding something. Emily's missing emerald brooch, village talk of stolen spoons and watches, Mary's late night walks to the Millal, pieces of a puzzle. Today, Miss Marple would find more. She pulled on her coat and hat, her stick ready in her hand. The village of St. Mary Mead was quiet, but secrets hummed beneath its calm surface. Miss Marple walked to Little Paddocks, her basket swinging. She wanted to talk to Clara, the Skinner's cook. Servants saw things others missed, and Clara had been there longer than Mary. At Little Paddocks, the door was ajar. Miss Marple knocked, but no one answered. She stepped inside, the smell of polish and bread filling the air. The parlour was empty, the teacup still on the table, its chip catching the dim light. She heard voices from the kitchen, Lavinia, cheerful chatter and Clara's low grumble. Miss Marple moved quietly, her shoes soft on the rug. In the kitchen, Lavinia was arranging flowers in a vase. Clara, a stout woman with flour on her apron, was kneading dough. "Morning, Miss Marple," Lavinia said, her face bright. "Come for tea. Mary's out fetching eggs." "Tea would be lovely," Miss Marple said, settling at the kitchen table. "But I'd like a word with Clara, if you don't mind." Clara's hands paused, her eyes wary. Lavinia nodded and bustled off to find the teapot. Miss Marple smiled at Clara, her voice gentle. "You've been here a long time, haven't you? You must know everything that happens in this house." Clara shrugged, her hands back to the dough. "I cook, I clean, I stay out of trouble. Don't know much about fancy brooches." Miss Marple nodded, her eyes on Clara's flour-dusted fingers. "Of course, but you see things. Like Mary, does she ever seem odd to you?" Clara hesitated, then leaned closer. "She's too quiet. Works like a machine, never stops. But I've seen her leave at night, after we're all in bed. Down Mill Lane, always in a hurry. Don't know why." Miss Marple's heart quickened. Mill Lane again? Does she talk about her past? Her family, maybe? Clara shook her head. "Not a word. Says she's from London, but that's all. Keeps her door locked, too. Says it's private." She snorted. "Private, in this house." Lavinia returned with the teapot, and Mary followed, carrying a basket of eggs. Her face was calm, but her eyes flicked to Miss Marple, quick and sharp. "Tea, ma'am?" she asked, setting a cup down. The same chipped teacup, perfectly placed. "Thank you, Mary," Miss Marple said, watching her pour. The tea steamed, but Mary's hands were steady now, no tremble. Too steady, Miss Marple thought, like she'd practiced hiding her nerves. Lavinia chatted about her roses, but Miss Marple's mind was elsewhere. She thought of St. Mary Mead years ago, a maid named Ellen who'd been too perfect. Ellen stole a locket, hid it in her room, and smiled through every lie. Miss Marple found her out by watching her hands. They shook when she lied. Mary's hands didn't shake now, but her eyes told a story. Fear, not guilt. Or was it both? As Mary cleared the table, a saucer slipped, clattering to the floor. "Oh," Mary gasped, kneeling to pick it up. A small paper fluttered from her apron pocket, landing near Miss Marple's foot. Mary didn't see it, but Miss Marple did. She bent slowly, her stick tapping, and slipped the paper into her sleeve. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Mary said, her face pale. She grabbed the saucer and hurried out, the eggs left on the table. Lavinia laughed. "Even Mary's not perfect." "Don't worry, Jane, it's just a saucer." Miss Marple smiled, but her fingers brushed the paper in her sleeve. It felt thin, like a receipt. She'd look later, away from prying eyes. The teacup sat on the table, its chip winking. A pattern was forming, like cracks in porcelain. Mary was careful, but not careful enough. After tea, Miss Marple excused herself and stepped into the garden. Lavinia was pruning roses, Emily nowhere. In sight, Miss Marple pulled the paper from her sleeve. It was a pawn ticket, crumpled but clear. 1 silver spoon, it read, with a date from last week and the name of a shop in the next town. Miss Marple's lips tightened. A spoon, like Mrs. Weatherby's, was Mary pawning stolen goods? Or was someone else? She tucked the ticket away and walked back to the village, her stick tapping slower now. The pawn shop was a clue, but it felt too neat, like a breadcrumb left on purpose. She thought of Ellen again, how the stolen locket was found too easily, planted to hide a bigger secret. Mary wasn't Ellen, but the pattern was the same perfection hiding a flaw at the village shop. Mrs. Price was sweeping the step. Back again, Miss Marple, she called, her broom pausing. Heard about Emily's brooch yet? Miss Marple nodded. Yes, quite a fuss. Have you heard anything new? About Mary, perhaps? Mrs. Price's eyes gleamed. Oh, plenty. Mr. Brown saw her at the mill again last night, carrying a bundle. Looked heavy, he said. And Mrs. Weatherby's spoon's still gone. People are talking, Miss Marple. A thief in St. Mary Mead. Miss Marple smiled, her mind sharp. Talk is just talk until there's proof. But thank you, Mrs. Price. She bought a bar of soap and left, the pawn ticket heavy in her pocket. Back at her cottage, Miss Marple sat by the fire, the ticket on her table. She poured tea, her own teacup, simple and unchipped. The pawn ticket was real, but it didn't fit. Mary was careful, too careful to drop something so damning. And her fear, those wide eyes when Mill Lane was mentioned, wasn't the fear of a thief caught red-handed. It was deeper, like someone trapped. Miss Marple sipped her tea, thinking of St. Mary Mead's secrets. Years ago, a boy named Tommy had stolen apples in a barn, but someone else took the blame. Miss Marple saw through it because Tommy's shoes were muddy while the blamed boys were clean. Evidence could lie, but people's habits didn't. Mary's habits, her late walks, her locked room, her perfect teacup were telling a story, but whose? She thought of the Skinner sisters. Lavinia trusted Mary, blind to her flaws. Emily watched her like a hawk, ready to pounce. The brooch, the spoon, the watch, small things, but they pointed to Mary. Too many pointers, Miss Marple thought, like a teacup placed just so to catch the eye. Tomorrow she'd visit the mill. It was old, crumbling, a place for secrets. Mary went there for a reason, and Miss Marple would find out why. She'd talk to Clara again, too. The cook's grumbles. Hid something, maybe loyalty, maybe fear, and that pawn ticket needed checking. The shop in the next town might know more. Miss Marple set her teacup down, the fire crackling. The village was like her cup, simple on the outside, full of secrets within. Mary was no thief, not in the usual way. Someone was pulling strings, and the chipped teacup was a clue. Its flaw wasn't random. It was a signal, a crack in the perfect picture of little paddocks. She smiled, her eyes twinkling. The truth was brewing, like tea in a pot. She'd find it, one careful sip at a time. Chapter 5. The teacups. Shadow Miss Jane Marple woke to a soft rain pattering on her cottage roof. She sat by the fire, her teacup warm in her hands, its plain surface comforting. The pawn ticket from Mary's apron lay on the table, its ink smudged but clear. One silver spoon, pawned last week at a shop in the next town. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her mind turning over the clues from little paddocks. The chipped teacup, Mary's late night walks to the mill, Emily's missing brooch, village whispers of theft. They were like tea leaves swirling in a cup, hinting at a pattern. Today, she'd visit the pawn shop and talk to Mary alone. Fear hid in that girl's eyes, and Miss Marple wanted to know why. She pulled on her coat and hat, tucking the pawn ticket into her pocket. Her stick tapped the wet path as she walked to the village, where a bus would take her to the next town. St. Mary Mead was quiet, the rain keeping folks indoors. At the bus stop, She nodded to Mr. Brown, who was muttering about his missing pocket. "Watch. Morning, Miss Marple," he said. "Heard about the Skinner's brooch. That Maid's trouble, mark my words." Miss Marple smiled, her eyes sharp. "We'll see, Mr. Brown. Things aren't always what they seem." The bus rumbled up, and she climbed aboard, her basket on her lap. The pawn shop was a dim, cluttered place, smelling of dust and old leather. A bell jingled as Miss Marple stepped inside. The shopkeeper, a thin man with a scruffy beard, looked up from his counter. "What can I do for you, ma'am?" he asked, his voice gruff. Miss Marple pulled out the pawn ticket, her fingers steady. "I found this. It mentions a silver spoon. Can you tell me about it?" The man squinted at the ticket, then nodded. I remember. A young woman brought it in plain face, neat clothes. Said it was her own, no questions asked. Paid her a few shillings. Spoon's still here if you want to see it." He shuffled to a shelf and brought back a small silver spoon, its handle engraved with a tiny rose. Miss Marple's heart quickened. It matched Mrs. Weatherby's description, her mother's spoon, stolen from the mantel. "Did she give a name?" Miss Marple asked, her voice soft. The man shook his head, didn't ask. She was quick, in and out. Looked nervous, kept glancing. At the door, Miss Marple thanked him and left, the rain heavier now. The spoon was real, the ticket was real, but something felt wrong. Mary, nervous and quick, pawning a stolen spoon. It was too neat, like a teacup placed to catch the eye. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where a boy once pawned a stolen watch to cover for his brother's gambling. Evidence could point the wrong way, if someone wanted it to. Back in the village, Miss Marple walked to little paddocks. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that mirrored the grey sky. Lavinia met her at the door, her face worried. "Jane, you're soaked. Come in, have tea." Emily still fuming about her brooch. The parlour was warm, the chipped teacup waiting on the table. Emily sat by the window, her knitting needles silent. "Back again, Jane," she said, her voice sharp. "Found my brooch yet?" "Not yet," Miss Marple said, settling into a chair. "But I'm looking." "Where's Mary?" "Out back, washing linens," Lavinia said, pouring tea. Poor girl works so hard, and Emily keeps glaring at her. Emily snorted. "She deserves it. I checked my room, again nothing. She's a thief, I'm sure." Miss Marple sipped her tea, the chip on the saucer catching her eye. It was no accident, that chip. A perfect maid like Mary wouldn't miss it unless she meant to. "Lavinia," Miss Marple said, "may I speak to Mary alone? Just a little chat." Lavinia hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, Jane, I'll fetch her." She bustled out, leaving Miss Marple with Emily. Emily's eyes narrowed. "You believe me, don't you? She's not what she seems." Miss Marple smiled, her fingers tracing the teacup's handle. "Nobody's quite what they seem, Emily. That's what makes life interesting." Mary entered, her apron damp from washing. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide, like a deer caught in a trap. "You wanted me, ma'am?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yes, dear," Miss Marple said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit, have some tea. I'd like to know you better." Mary sat, her hands folded tight in her lap. Miss Marple poured tea, placing the chipped teacup in front of Mary. The girl's eyes flicked to it, then away, quick as a blink. Miss Marple saw it. "You've done wonders here," she said. "Lavinia can't stop praising you. But it must be hard, being new in a village like this. Everyone watches, don't they? Mary nodded, her fingers twitching. Yes, ma'am. I just do my work, keep my head down. Wise, Miss Marple said, sipping her tea. But small places talk. They say you walk to Mill Lane at night, a quiet spot, good for thinking, or meeting someone, perhaps. Mary's face paled, her hands gripping the teacup. I like the quiet, ma'am, that's all. Her voice shook, just a little. Miss Marple leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Mary, dear, you seem frightened. If something's wrong, you can tell me. I'm just an old lady who likes tea and truth. Mary's eyes met hers, wide and wet. For a moment it seemed she'd speak, but then she shook her head. Nothing's wrong, ma'am, I'm fine. She stood, the teacup rattling in its saucer. I should get back to work. She curtsied and left, her steps fast. Miss Marple sat back, her mind racing. Mary's fear was real, not the guilt of a thief, but the panic of someone cornered. The pawn ticket, the spoon, the chipped teacup, they didn't add up. Someone was pushing Mary, making her act. But who? Lavinia returned, her face worried. Is Mary all right, Jane? She looked upset. She's carrying a weight, Miss Marple said, setting her teacup down. But I'm not sure what kind. Emily muttered, she's carrying my brooch, that's what, and who knows what else. Miss Marple didn't answer. She thought of the pawn ticket, still in her pocket. It was too easy, like a clue left for a child to find. She remembered a girl in St. Mary Mead, years ago, blamed for stealing a necklace. The real thief had planted it in her bag, hoping she'd take the fall. Mary's fear felt the same. Someone else's shadow hung over her. As she left Little Paddocks, the sky was clearing, a weak sun breaking through. Miss Marple walked slowly, her stick tapping. The village was quiet, but its whispers were loud. The thief, Mary, the perfect maid, Mary, the mystery. The pawnshop pointed to her, but Miss Marple didn't trust it. Evidence could be a lie, like a chip in a teacup meant to distract Dot. At her cottage, she lit the fire and poured tea. Her own teacup was simple, no flaws, no secrets. She pulled out the pawn ticket, studying it by the firelight. The spoon was Mrs. Weatherby's, no doubt. But Mary's fear, her quick glances at the teacup, told a different story. Someone was using her, maybe threatening her. The mill, the locked room, the mysterious Mrs. Devereuth, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Miss Marple was close to seeing the shape. Tomorrow she'd go to the mill, see what drew Mary there. She'd watch Emily. To her, anger was too sharp, too focused, and Lavinia's trust, blind as it was, might hide its own secrets. The chipped teacup was the key, a small flaw in a perfect picture. It wasn't just a cup. It was a signal, a crack in someone's plan. Miss Marple sipped her tea, the fire warm against her knees. The truth was brewing like leaves in a pot. She'd find it, one careful sip at a time. Chapter 6. The sisters' secret. Miss Jane Marple sat by her cottage fire, her teacup warm in her hands. The rain had stopped, but the air was damp, carrying the scent of wet earth through her open window. She sipped her tea, thinking of Little Paddocks and the chipped teacup that seemed to watch everything. Mary's fear, the pawn ticket for a stolen spoon, Emily's missing emerald brooch, and whispers of village thefts. They were like tea leaves settling in a cup, showing a pattern. Yesterday's talk with Mary had confirmed it. The maid wasn't a thief, not by choice. Someone was pushing her, and Miss Marple suspected the answer lay with the Skinner sisters. Today, she'd watch them closely. She pulled on her coat, her stick ready, and walked to little paddocks. The village of St. Mary Mead was quiet, its cottages huddled under a grey sky. Her basket swung as she moved, her mind on the teacups chip a small flaw that pointed to a bigger truth. At little paddocks, Lavinia opened the door, her face less cheerful than usual. "Jane, you're a blessing," she said, her voice tight. "It's been a terrible morning." Miss Marple stepped into the parlour, where the chipped teacup sat on the table, its roses faded in the dim light. Emily was in her usual chair, her face pale, her knitting untouched. "Another theft," Emily said, her voice sharp as a needle. "My silver locket gone. It was in my jewellery box yesterday. Now it's not." Lavinia wrung her hands. "Emily, you're sure? Maybe you misplaced it, like the scarf last year." Emily's eyes flashed. "I don't misplace things, Lavinia. It's her Mary. She was in my room yesterday, dusting." "Who else could it be?" Miss Marple sat, her eyes on the teacup. Its chip glinted like a wink. Mary entered, carrying a tray with tea and biscuits. Her face was calm, but her hands were tight on the tray, her knuckles white. "Tea, ma'am?" she asked Miss Marple, her voice soft. "Thank you, dear," Miss Marple said, watching Mary pour. The teacup clinked against the saucer, the chip catching the light. Mary's eyes flicked to it, then away, quick and nervous. Miss Marple saw it. The chip wasn't just a mistake, was a signal, a crack in Mary's perfect mask. Lavinia sighed, pouring her own tea. "Jane, tell Emily she's wrong. Mary's no thief. She's worked so hard, kept this house spotless. I'm thinking of giving her a raise." Emily snorted, her hands clenched. "A raise? For stealing? You're too soft, Lavinia. Always have been. You'd give her the house, if I let you." Miss Marple sipped her tea, her ears sharp. The sisters' words were like a tug-of-war, pulling at something deeper. Lavinia's trust in Mary was blind, almost fierce. Emily's anger was hot, but too focused, like she wanted Mary gone. The teacup sat between them, quiet but heavy with meaning. "Emily," Miss Marple said, her voice gentle, "tell me about the locket. Was it special?" Emily's face softened, just for a moment. "It was father's, silver, with a rose engraved on it. I wore it as a girl. Kept it in my jewellery box, locked this time. Only I have the key." She glared at Mary, who was clearing crumbs from the table. Mary's hands paused, her face pale. "I don't touch locked boxes, ma'am," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She curtsied and left, her steps quick. Lavinia shook her head. "Emily, you're scaring her. She'll leave, and then where will we be? No maid will stay with your suspicions." Emily's lips thinned. "Good, better no maid than a thief." Miss Marple set her teacup down, the chip winking at her. A locked box, a missing locket, and Mary's fear it didn't add up. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where a shopkeeper once accused a boy of stealing bread, only to find his own wife had taken it to spite him. Families hid secrets, and the Skinner sisters were no different. "Lavinia," Miss Marple said, "you've known Mary 2 months. You trust her so much." Lavinia blinked, surprised. "She's kind, Jane. Works hard, never complains. She reminds me of me when I was young. Always doing for others. I want to help her, maybe leave her something in my will." Emily's head snapped up. "Your will? Are you mad? She's a servant, Lavinia, not family. You'll give her everything and leave me with nothing. Lavinia's face reddened. Don't be silly, Emily, it's just a thought. You're my sister, I'd never leave you out. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. A will, money. The sisters' tension was like a thread pulled tight, ready to snap. Emily's anger wasn't just about theft. It was about losing control. Lavinia's kindness was generous, but reckless. And Mary, caught between them, was scared. The teacup's chip seemed to watch it all, a silent clue. May I see your room again, Emily? Miss Marple asked, just to look. Emily nodded, her jaw tight. Fine, but you'll find nothing. She's too clever. Upstairs, Emily's room was as neat as before. The jewelry box sat on the dresser, small and brass, its lock shiny. Emily opened it with a key from her pocket. Inside were a few rings, a pearl pin, but no locket. See, Emily said. Gone. Miss Marple peered inside, then around the room. The dresser was polished, the bed smooth, the curtains straight. Mary's work, no doubt. But something felt off, like a picture hung crooked. She knelt, her knees creaking, and looked. Under the bed, a glint caught her azure, tiny silver chain, half hidden by dust. She reached for it, her fingers brushing a small, rose-engraved locket. Emily, she said, holding it up, is this it? Emily gasped, her face pale. Where? Was that under the bed? I never. Her voice trailed off, her eyes wide. Lavinia clapped her hands. Oh, Jane, you found it. See, Emily, I told you it was misplaced. Emily's lips trembled. I didn't misplace it. Someone put it there. Her. She pointed at the door. Where? Mary had been Dot. Miss Marple tucked the locket into her pocket, her mind racing. A locket under the bed, a locked box, a pawn ticket for a spoon, too many clues, too neatly placed. She thought of a girl in St. Mary Mead, years ago, blamed for stealing. A watch. The real thief had hidden it in her room, hoping she'd take the fall. Mary was no thief, but someone wanted her to look like one. Back in the parlour, Miss Marple sipped her tea, the chipped teacup steady in her hands. Emily, she said, who else comes into your room? Clara, perhaps. Emily shook her head. Clara cooks. She doesn't clean up here, only Mary. Lavinia frowned. Jane, you don't think Mary's innocent, do you? After all this, Miss Marple smiled, her eyes on the teacup. I think someone's playing a game, and Mary's caught in it. As she left Little Paddocks, the sky was darkening, a chill in the air. Miss Marple walked slowly, her stick tapping. The locket, the pawn ticket, the chipped teacup, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was twisted. Emily's anger was too sharp, Lavinia's trust too blind, and Mary's fear it wasn't about stealing. It was about something bigger, something hidden in the sisters' home at her cottage. Miss Marple lit the fire and poured tea. Her own teacup was plain, no chips, no secrets. She set the locket on the table, its silver glinting. It was too easy. Finding it under the bed, like the pawn ticket, it felt planted, meant to point at Mary. But why, and who? She thought of the sisters Lavinia's talk of her will, Emily's fear of losing everything. Money made people do strange things. In St. Mary Mead, a farmer once hid his own tools to blame a neighbour, all for a land dispute. Emily's accusations felt the same, too loud, too sure. Was she hiding her own hand? Tomorrow, Miss Marple would go to the mill, see what drew Mary. There she'd watch Clara, The cook's grumbles might hide more than she said, and the teacup's chip it was no mistake. It was a clue, a crack in someone's careful plan. The truth was close, brewing like tea in a pot. Miss Marple smiled, her eyes twinkling. She'd find it, one sip at a time. Chapter 7. The teacup overflows. Miss Jane Marple sat in her cottage, her teacup warm in her hands. The morning was cool, with a soft mist hanging over St. Mary Mead. She sipped her tea, thinking of little paddocks and the chipped teacup that seemed to see everything. The pawn ticket, the silver locket found under Emily's bed, Mary's fearful eyes, and the sisters' sharp words, they were like tea leaves settling, showing a clear pattern. Emily's anger was too loud, Lavinia's trust too blind, and Mary was caught in the middle, not a thief, but a pawn. Today, Miss Marple would stir the pot. A tea party, with everyone there, would show her who was hiding what. She wrote a note to Lavinia, inviting the sisters, Mary and Clara for tea at Little Paddock's that afternoon. Just a friendly gathering, she wrote, her pen steady, but her eyes twinkled. Tea parties were perfect for watching people, how they sat, how they sipped, how they lied. She tucked the note into her basket and walked to the village, her stick tapping the damp path at Little Paddock's. Lavinia welcomed her with a smile. A tea party, Jane. What a lovely idea. I'll tell Mary to bake scones. Emily's still cross about her locket, but she'll come. Miss Marple nodded, her eyes on the parlour table. The chipped teacup was there, its roses faded, but its chip bright. Wonderful, she said. Let's make it cozy. Everyone together. By afternoon, the parlour was ready. The table held a lace cloth, a silver teapot and cups, including the chipped one, placed by Mary. Lavinia bustled about, arranging biscuits. Emily sat stiffly, her eyes narrow. Clara, the cook, hovered near the door, her apron flour dusted. Mary moved quietly, setting out plates, her face pale but calm. Miss Marple sat at the head of the table, her basket by her side. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice soft. "Tea brings us together, doesn't it? A chance to talk, to share." She lifted her teacup, the chipped one, and sipped. Everyone watched, their hands still. Lavinia poured tea, her bracelets jingling. "Jane, you're so kind to do this. Mary's scones are perfect, aren't they?" Mary blushed, her eyes down. "Just a simple recipe, ma'am." Emily snorted, her teacup untouched. "Perfect. That's her game. Too perfect to trust." Clara shifted, her face uneasy. Miss Marple smiled, her eyes sharp. "Clara, you've been here years. You must know this house, inside out. Ever notice anything odd, say, about the silver?" Clara's hands twisted her apron. "I keep to the kitchen, ma'am, but, well, I saw Mary with a spoon once, polishing it late at night. Looked like Mrs. Weatherby's, the one that's gone." Mary's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "Polish all the silver, ma'am. It's my job." Miss Marple nodded, sipping her tea. The chip on the saucer glinted like a tiny eye. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where a girl once hid a stolen ring in her apron, only to be caught when it fell out during tea. Clues fell when you shook things up. She reached for the teapot, her hand trembling just enough to be noticed. "Dear," she said, her voice weak, "I'm so clumsy today." She tipped the teapot, letting tea spill across the table. Lavinia gasped, grabbing a napkin. Mary jumped to help, her hands quick. Clara froze, her eyes on the mess. Emily stood, her face red. "Jane, really? That's my best cloth." Miss Marple fluttered her hands, her eyes wide but watching. "I'm so sorry. Let me help." She dabbed at the spill, her fingers brushing the chipped teacup. It wobbled, then fell, rolling toward Emily. The chip gleamed, sharp and clear. Emily snatched the teacup, her hands shaking. "Careful," she snapped, her voice too loud. She set it back, her fingers lingering on the chip, as if hiding it. Miss Marple's heart quickened. Emily's reaction was too fast, too fierce. The teacup was a clue, and Emily knew it. She sat back, her voice calm. "Such a pretty cup, even with its chip. Funny how flaws show the truth, isn't it?" Lavinia frowned, mopping the table. "It's just a cup, Jane. Mary should have replaced it, but she's so busy." Mary's face paled, her hands still. "I meant to, ma'am. I didn't notice." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Didn't notice. You notice everything else. You're too clever, Mary." Miss Marple sipped her tea, her eyes moving from face to face. Clara's unease, Mary's fear, Lavinia's confusion, Emily's anger. They were like pieces of a puzzle, fitting together. The spilled tea had done its job, shaking them loose. She thought of the locket under Emily's bed, the pawn ticket in Mary's apron, the chipped teacup. They pointed to Mary, but Emily's hands on the cup told a different story. "Emily," Miss Marple said, her voice gentle, "you're sure the locket was stolen, not just moved?" Emily's face tightened. "Stolen, I told you it was. Locked in my box. Only I have the key." Miss Marple nodded, her fingers brushing the locket in her pocket. She'd kept it since yesterday, its silver cool against her hand. "And the key, where do you keep it?" Emily hesitated, her eyes darting to the teacup. "In my drawer, locked, safe." Miss Marple smiled, her mind racing. A locked box, a key in a drawer, a locket under the bed, too many locks, too many lies. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where a farmer hid his own tools to frame a rival, only to slip when asked about his shed's lock. Emily's slip was in her hands, clutching the teacup like a secret. "Lavinia," Miss Marple said, "you mentioned your will. Have you told Mary about it?" Lavinia blinked, her napkin pausing. "Well, yes, a little. I said I might leave her something for her hard work. She deserves it." Emily's teacup clattered, tea splashing. "You told her, Lavinia, you're a fool. She's stealing to get more, and you're helping her." Mary's eyes filled with tears, her voice a whisper. "I didn't take anything, ma'am, I swear." Miss Marple leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Emily, you're quick to blame. But the locket was under your bed, not stolen. The pawn ticket found too icily in Mary's apron. And this teacup," she tapped the chipped rim, "it's been here every day, unchanged. Why? Because someone wants us to notice it." Emily's face went white, her hands trembling. "What are you saying, Jane?" Miss Marple set her teacup down, the chip glinting. "I'm saying someone's playing a game, hiding things, planting clues, pointing at Mary, but the teacup tells the truth. You touched it, Emily, when it fell. You knew its chip, like you knew the locket's hiding place." Lavinia gasped. "Jane, you can't mean Emily." Emily stood, her chair scraping. "This is nonsense. I'm no thief. She's the one sneaking around, pawning spoons." Miss Marple's eyes were steady. Mary's scared, not guilty. Someone's using her, making her look like a thief. The locket, the ticket, the teacup, They're yours, Emily. You hid them to blame her, didn't you? Because Lavinia wants to give her money, and you're afraid of losing it." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Her hands shook, the teacup rattling in its saucer. I just wanted to protect us," she whispered. "Lavinia's too soft. She'd give everything to that girl. I hid the locket, yes. The spoon, too. I wanted Mary gone." Lavinia's eyes filled with tears. "Emily, how could you? Mary's done nothing." Mary stood silent, her face pale but relieved. Clara muttered, "Told you, didn't I? Too much fuss over nothing." Miss Marple sipped her tea, the chipped teacup steady in her hands. The truth was out, like tea spilled from a pot. Emily's fear of losing control had turned her into a schemer, framing an innocent girl. The teacup, with its tiny chip, had watched it all, a quiet witness to human flaws. As the party ended, Lavinia hugged Mary, promising to make things right. Emily sat, her face crumpled, her anger gone. Miss Marple stood, her stick tapping. "Tea clears the mind," she said, smiling, "and the truth." Chapter 8. The final. Poor Miss Jane Marple sat in the parlour of Little Paddocks, her teacup warm in her hands. The afternoon light filtered through lace curtains, casting soft shadows on the table. The chipped teacup, with its faded roses, sat before her, its tiny flaw gleaming like a truth uncovered. Yesterday's tea party had stirred the pot, spilling secrets like tea on a cloth. Emily's confession that she'd hidden the locket and spoon to frame Mary hung in the air, heavy but clear. Now, Miss Marple needed to tie up the loose ends, ensure Mary's name was cleared, and mend the rift between the Skinner sisters. The teacup, her silent partner, had watched it all. Lavinia stood by the window, her face pale, her hands twisting a handkerchief. "Jane, I can't believe it," she said, her voice shaky. "Emily, my own sister, doing such a thing. Poor Mary. How could I not see?" Emily sat in her stiff chair, her knitting untouched, her eyes red. "I didn't mean harm," she whispered. I was scared, Lavinia. You kept talking about your will, giving things to Mary. What about me?" Miss Marple sipped her tea, her blue eyes gentle but sharp. "Fear makes us do foolish things, Emily, but the truth is out now. Let's set it right." Mary entered, carrying a tray with fresh scones. Her face was still pale, but her eyes were calmer, like a storm had passed. She set the tray down, her hands steady, and glanced at the chipped teacup. "Tea, ma'am?" she asked Miss Marple, her voice soft. "Thank you, Mary," Miss Marple said, watching her pour. The teacup clinked against the saucer, its chip catching the light. Mary didn't flinch this time. She knew the truth was out, and the fear in her eyes was fading. Clara. The cook hovered near the door, her apron crumpled. "I knew it wasn't." "Mary," she muttered. "Told you, didn't I? All that fuss over nothing." Miss Marple smiled, setting her teacup down. "Clara, you've been a help. You saw Mary's late-night walks, didn't you? Tell us about them." Clara shifted, her face uneasy. "Well, ma'am, I saw her go to the mill a few times after dark. Looked like she was meeting someone. I didn't want to pry, but it seemed odd." Mary's hands paused, her eyes wide. I wasn't stealing, ma'am. I swear. I went to the mill because someone told me to." Miss Marple leaned forward, her voice gentle. "Who, Mary? You can tell us now. You're safe." Mary's lips trembled. her hands gripping her apron. It was a man from London. He came when I started here. Said he knew me from my old job with Mrs. Devereux. Said if I didn't do what he wanted, pass him things, meet him at the mill he'd tell everyone I'd stolen before, but I never did. He lied, but I was scared. I didn't want to lose. This place, Lavinia gasped, her handkerchief dropping. Oh, Mary, why didn't you say we'd have helped you? Emily's face softened, her voice low. I made it worse, didn't I? Blaming you, hiding things. I thought you were after Lavinia's money. Mary shook her head, tears in her eyes. I just wanted to work, ma'am. I didn't want trouble. Miss Marple sipped her tea, the chipped teacup steady in her hands. The pattern was clear now, like tea leaves settled at the bottom of a cup. Emily's fear had driven her to frame Mary, hiding the locket and spoon to make her look guilty. But Mary's own fear of a man from her past had kept her silent, making her seem suspicious. The teacup's chip had been the clue, a small flaw in a perfect picture, pointing to Emily's scheme. Mary, Miss Marple said, this man at the mill, what did he want you to do? Mary wiped her eyes. He wanted small things, spoons, a watch, anything I could take. Said he'd sell them, split the money. I didn't do it, ma'am. I couldn't, but he kept coming, threatening. That's why I had the pawn ticket. He gave it to me, said to keep it safe or he'd ruin me. Miss Marple nodded, her mind racing. The pawn ticket, found in Mary's apron, wasn't hers. It was planted, just like the locket, under Emily's bed. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where a shopkeeper once blamed a boy for stealing, only to learn his own cousin had set it up for revenge. People used fear to control others, and Mary had been trapped. Emily, Miss Marple said, her voice firm, you hid the locket and spoon, didn't you, to make Mary leave? Emily's hands shook, her eyes on the teacup. Yes, she whispered. I was wrong. Lavinia's talk of her will. It scared me. I've always handled our money, kept us safe. I thought Mary was a threat. I took the spoon from Mrs. Weatherby's, pawned it, put the ticket in Mary's apron. The locket, I hid it under my bed, made it look like she dropped it. I just wanted her gone. Lavinia's eyes filled with tears. Emily, how could you? Mary's been nothing but kind. Emily's voice broke. I know, I'm sorry, Lavinia. I was afraid of losing you, losing everything. Miss Marple set her teacup down, the chip glinting. Fear makes us blind, Emily, but you've owned your mistake. That's a start. She turned to Mary. And you, dear, you're free of that man now. Tell the police about him. They'll find him, and he won't bother you again. Mary nodded, her face brighter. Thank you, ma'am. I was so scared, but I feel lighter now. Clara snorted, crossing her arms. Told you she wasn't a thief. Should have listened to me. Lavinia stood, hugging Mary. You're staying, dear. No more nonsense about wills or money. We're a family here, aren't we, Emily? Emily hesitated, then nodded, her eyes soft. Yes, I was wrong, Mary. Forgive me. Mary smiled, small but real. I do, ma'am. I just want to work, be part of this house. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her heart warm. The teacup's chip had done its job, showing the truth in its tiny flaw. Emily's scheme was undone, Mary was cleared, and the sisters were talking again, their bond frayed but mending. The man from London was a loose end, but the village police would handle him. St. Mary Mead had its peace back. As the afternoon faded, Miss Marple stood, her stick tapping. "Thank you for the tea," she said, smiling. "It's cleared the air, hasn't it?" Lavinia laughed, her cheer returning. "You're a wonder, Jane, you and that teacup." Emily looked at the chipped teacup, her face thoughtful. "I should have replaced that cup, but it showed me up, didn't it?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "Teacups see more than we think. They hold the ascendancy, truth, secrets, and human nature. A chipped teacup holds the most." She left little paddocks, the evening air cool and sweet. The village was quiet, its secrets settled like dust. At her cottage, Miss Marple lit the fire and poured tea. Her own teacup was plain, no chips, no lies. She thought of St. Mary Mead, where people hid their fears but left traces. Hands, planted clues, a chipped teacup. Human nature was messy, full of mistakes, but truth always came out. Like tea poured from a pot dot, she sipped her tea, the fire crackling. The case was solved, the teacup story told. Mary was safe, the sisters were healing, and St. Mary Mead was home again. Miss Marple smiled. Life, like tea, was best when clear and warm.